now those players are Dr. Hippie, they're Pavel, there are these players that have ground out a name for themselves, and that's what HCT is all about. It's about moving the Hearthstone tournament system to a truly open format and letting everyone grind for themselves, play for themselves, prove their own point that they are fantastic players.
Yeah, and you just saw a quick glance there. The match we're going to have the pleasure of casting is going to be HotMEOWTH versus Muzzy. That's going to be a great one. We were casting HotMEOWTH's game earlier on, which was absolutely amazing. Like, pretty much cannot praise that specific game as well within that match, enough. It was absolutely a joy to cast. But this one's going to be a great one. Muzzy versus HotMEOWTH. Obviously, TJ was mentioning earlier, Muzzy's one of his picks. Yeah. He's still in contention to qualify as well. And a player who I feel like almost the world has been waiting to actually perform well in a tournament. However harsh it may sound, he hasn't had the best tournament performance, even though we know he's super consistent on ladder, a fantastic deck builder, just hasn't quite hit his stride yet. And it looks like this might be the tournament where he does. Yeah, and TJ just came out and said it earlier in the pre-show. He said Muzzy has a bit of a reputation as a choke artist. And unfortunately, that is just kind of true. Not only because he keeps getting very, very close and then falling short, but he visibly seems to be nervous. You could see his hands shaking at HCT events last year when he got close to the hill of qualifying. So hopefully he's now over that hump and he can pull it together. And thankfully we are now finally ready to get into the game. Cannot wait for this one, Raven. Yeah, it's going to be HotMEOWTH versus Muzzy, of course. HotMEOWTH on the Mage and Muzzy on the Pirate Warrior. Feel like the themes of this Swiss so far are a lot of pirates and a lot of mages. Yeah, absolutely. Two of the most common lineups that we have been seeing is the quadruple aggro, which is the most dominant deck in the tournament, just in terms of number of people that have brought it. That is a lineup that's basically just been put together by Muzzy, and other people have said, hey, Muzz, that's a great idea. I'll do that too. Triple aggro decks plus the tempo mage is essentially the fourth aggro deck, if you want to look at it that way. Whereas HotMEOWTH, I believe, is running the 2 aggro, 2 Reno lineup. Yes, and we can see there as well the seedings going into this tournament. HotMEOWTH #1 off the back of his BlizzCon performance as well, of course, and then Muzzy #8. So we start to see, as we start to move through the last couple of rounds of Swiss, that players who came in pretty high seeded are doing pretty well so far, and this is going to be a great one to go as Muzzy. Well, maybe not too great for Muzzy. As Pirate Warrior turn 2, you don't normally want to just press hero power. No, that does seem less than ideal, but he does have the potential for South Sea Captain plus 2/2 patches coming up, which if you do have a slow start, this is quite often the reason that you have a slow start, because you're playing for this eventuality here with the 2/2 patches. So Muzzy won't be too sad right now, and he'd be a lot happier if he could see his opponent's hand right now, because yes, there's an Ice Block, yes, there's a Kazakus, but he's not having to face down Reno Jackson just yet. Yeah, and it looks like HotMEOWTH has the option. Oh, okay, he's going to go for Blast. He did have the option to actually just Volk Potion this turn, ping down the Captain next turn, but if a second Captain came down, then you were in a pretty rough spot if you're HotMEOWTH. So just playing it safe, getting rid of that Captain, and keeping it steady there. So not looking too bad at all. Follows up, as I said, with the Corcoran, being able to keep up the pressure, but definitely going into HotMEOWTH's turn 4, you'll probably be happy being on 25 health at this moment in time. Yep, certainly will, but he does have one of those awkward hands, does Muzzy, where he's just looking at all the weapon synergy cards in his deck and just missing that weapon to tie it all together. It's a very similar feeling to playing Dragon Priest and whiffing on all your dragon activators, or all of your dragons, one or the other. So it's a tough spot to be in. He's just kind of just playing out minions on the board for value right now, and HotMEOWTH has repeated answers to in the form of removal spells to be able to clear this up. But a weapon is what is really going to make this hand explosive, and he's whiffing on it again. Yeah, and I was going to say the slow start with the pirate heavy start with no weapons obviously isn't great, but because of the strength of cards like South Sea Captain, you can actually make it work a lot of the time, but not when you combine that slow start with answers from your opponent. Right. We saw the Volk Potion get used to great effect there, cleaning up pretty much any level of threat Muzzy could muster. Or muster, maybe. Oh. And yeah, now it looks like it's just... I knew it would. Now it's just going to be Cultist and Raider, I imagine, just to play stuff. It feels terrible, but you can't just say, well, next turn I'll draw a weapon. Oh, well, the turn after that I'll draw a weapon. You cannot wait and just pass this turn. Yep, Spider Tank, River Croc, Go was the turn, and that's just not a powerful Hearthstone turn when you're playing an aggro deck that has all these explosive synergies. Yeah, I mean... River Croc, man. Wrong Luminosity member. Chucky is the arena expert now on Luminosity. You want to talk to him? I'll have to give him a shout afterwards. Yeah. So, Kazakus is available, ready to go, and a lot of the time there aren't too many great reasons not to play Kazakus in this instance. Potentially get the AoE to clear up pretty much all the pirates that are going to be played. And maybe, there's summon, there's armor, there's freeze, there's a lot of great options here, especially when you're not too far behind. It gives you much more flexibility with this potion choosing.
So I suspect gain 7 armor was the option that he took from the first choice. One of the best, for sure, that you can get up against an outright aggressive deck like Pirate Warrior. This one's a little bit tougher. Merit to freeze 2 and merit to summon 2. It depends whether you want to try and stall or whether you want to try and tempo in this position. +4, definitely a possibility as well, but it's going to be hard for him to get a grip on the board to then allow that buff effect to go off, because you would expect to be behind on board for the majority of the game against a more aggressive deck.
Yeah, definitely a tough one, because just handing over the priority over to Muzzy here, and he knows his Kazakus will die if Muzzy chooses to kill it, of course. The damage is already there, and yet again, Muzzy, head down. Where are these weapons? I'm sure I'll put them in the deck.
Yeah, I mean, I love the point that you made where this minion-heavy hand would have done great against the type of Reno Mage draw that just goes kind of nothing, 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 Reno, right?
Yeah.
That is...
or even like a minion. If you just had Kazakus, for example, you can still make that work.
Exactly. But there's, that is a winning draw for Reno Mage and against a lot of aggro decks. If you just draw Reno, a lot else doesn't matter. But Muzzy had the kind of hand that beat that because he would have stuck all these minions to the board. It's just this particular hand with no weapons, very little direct damage until he's getting to these later stages now with Leroy and the heroic strikes. Just hasn't lined up well against constant answers from HotMEOWTH.
Yeah, and the problem is in this matchup, it's not as if Muzzy's against like a rogue, where worst case you could just double heroic strike face and be like, I'm just going to get this damaging because I know it's permanent. Versus Reno deck and then just the mage with the absorption sort of potential just means that you can't just throw away the damage. And oh my god, I have never seen someone lock in a weapon as quick as Muzzy just did. The card didn't even touch his hand.
Nope.
It just locked in, got that equipped, and now Muzzy's at least has a much stronger chance in this game so far.
Well, here's the thing. He's now sat with just the deckhand in his hand. He's already expended the Cultist. We've already got the Bloodcell Raider on board that never got buffed up to the 5/3 that it would be now. So the Fiery War Axe has actually come too late. Muzzy has had to respond to the situation, try to get some pressure down by having those Spider Tank River Croc turns. And now the weapon synergy in his hand is just not even really there.
Yeah, it does allow repeat damage though,
yes,
which is important, and I do like this. I feel Muzzy's at the point where he's just like, look, I'm working with what I've got here. I'm just going to hit him very, very hard in the face and hope that I can do it again next turn and it be enough. At this point, when you're this far behind, you do have to do that. You make the play that, either procs the block, as low as possible so you can proc it the turn after and just kill your opponent, or you just cross your fingers and hope for no Reno.
Yep, so he's pushing 9 from hand now with the War Axe and the Leroy Jenkins. So if he was to stick any damage or draw any damage to the board, that would represent lethal. But the Kazakus potion, he did end up going with Freeze 2 as the second choice. Took Armor as the first, as suspected. But hey, there's some potential repeated damage that can start to cancel out some of that armor gain. The hand is just about coming together now for Muzzy.
Yeah, that draw had to be pretty spectacular to keep Muzzy in this game, to be honest. The addition of the armor and just the bought health, it was like even more armor potentially because of the freeze effect on the minion, even though it's only 2. 2 can often be the difference between winning and losing a game. Fireball going to be used to kill off the cultist. Ice Block's going to be equipped, so HotMEOWTH is now just piecing to... Oh, it was the Babbling Book Ice Block as well. I actually didn't realize that. That's 2 Ice Blocks available. Alex Straza is going to be live as well, so it's not as if Muzzy is going to push the Ice Block in the early turns.
And yeah, Muzzy's deck, in a situation where he's pretty much just trying to draw reach to end the game, is a little bit shorter on reach than it could be. He's just playing the single copy of Bash in those Bash and or Mortal Strike slots. So it's weird to say that a Pirate Warrior is a little bit weak on reach, but Muzzy is as close to just purely board focused as you can get. In the meantime, the polarizing card has been drawn, and that will pretty much just end the game on the spot.
Polarizing card for me was Cabal Courier into Cabal Courier. I've had enough of that today.
Fair.
Yeah, this is just too much now. It already looked like MEOWTH was pretty, set for this game. Then Reno was drawn. Okay. He's going to very quickly, I imagine, push Muzzy out of this game and we'll be moving on to game 2 shortly.
Yeah, Muzzy here, I think, is just going to have to go for the block pop in the most efficient way that he can and try and pick up the damage to follow this up. He does need to expend all of his resources to pop at one or to pop at all. So he'll be living on a dream, hoping there's no heal and that he draws damage. Unfortunately, he's not going to get as far as seeing his next card because it's going to all be irrelevant once this Reno Jackson comes down, and then Muzzy is going to reach for the bottom right, buddy.
Yep, pretty much has to. He's just going through the motions now. If there's any chance that you can win a game, you take that chance in a tournament as, you know, as difficult, as prestigious as this. So, you know, Muzzy just playing it out, I imagine, especially after seeing the Reno soul casting back into the deck, means that he's going to have a quick glance on what this first draw is. Corcoran, don't think it's going to be enough. And it looks like HotMEOWTH is in a fantastic position to clear up this game.
Yep, Muzzy just thinking through all his outs. Muzzy genuinely is one of the most accomplished players in the game. He's yet to prove it in a competitive manner, but he is more than capable of evaluating every single line and see if he can find anyone that wins the game there. Takes a few extra seconds, comes to the conclusion that no, amazingly, the Pirate Warrior cannot beat Reno Jackson for 29 healing and gives the game up.
Yeah, but like, you know, as I mentioned earlier on when we sort of saw the state of Muzzy's hand, like, well, he procced the block, which was from Babbling Book as well, so he wouldn't have actually had the block to proc without the book. And also, he still put a lot of pressure on, considering there was Volk Potion to clear off the captain, there was the Kazakus Potion to stall the game out, and even with pretty much just minions, there was a lot of pressure. So imagine if you drew a weapon, everything could have changed there. But HotMEOWTH does take the first game and has just Rogue and Warrior left against the almost like mirrored style lineup that Muzzy has left.
Yep. Oh, I misspoke actually. I remember, yeah, HotMEOWTH is playing just the best deck strategy. He's not playing the double Reno strat. He's playing Rogue and Reno Mage alongside Warrior and Shaman. So he had the mirror match early on against the best deck strategy, and he's picked up the win with one of those best decks, just 2 more of them left to go. Yeah,
and we actually, you know, have had some words with Muzzy previous, get his thoughts on the game in general, and we actually, very relevantly, have what his thoughts are on when he falls behind and how he approaches the game after that.
I feel if you're behind in a match, you shouldn't let it discourage you and make you make bad plays. I feel you should still stick in it because you never know what cards you're going to draw. So those losing scenarios could turn into winning scenarios. Just don't let it discourage you and get to your head.
I hope he takes his own advice there, because he's going to need it. This is a very important game for him, and he needs to just step away from the game he just lost and focus on the rest coming forward, which is the main message there.
Yep, it would take a will of tempered steel to not get at least a little bit discouraged when you see Reno Jackson come down for the 29 heal when you are playing the aggro deck in tournament, but Muzzy, again, needs to heed his own advice, because his advice there essentially boils down to don't get emotional. And as TJ mentioned, and I reiterated earlier, he does have this reputation of letting nerves and emotions just overtake him at crucial turns. So hopefully, as you said, he can take that advice to heart and just continue to play solid, consistent Hearthstone.
Yep, and as we move on to game 2, it's going to be a good old-fashioned pirate brawl going on here. And, you know, Muzzy obviously just playing the Pirate Warrior again, HotMEOWTH moving on to his, starting off with Finley, which Finley turn 1 can always be a little bit awkward sometimes. The card is just great to drop on turn 1 because of the size of the body, but you have to make that decision on the hero power, you know, straight away from turn 1 without any knowledge of your opponent's hand. And then you have to just stick with that path, right? You've kind of locked in, and we can see HotMEOWTH has gone for the Hunter Hero Power Steady Shot, so he now is pretty much got to play as the aggressor regardless of what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot more linear in tournament where you at least know the archetype and the exact card for card list that you're coming up against. It's sometimes even more frustrating on ladder, especially if you go first, because you have no idea whether you're playing the control variation of the class or the aggro variation, but here you at least have some idea what your plan is, and sure, you can't react to their hand and their game state by the time you make the decision, but you can still look at your opening hand as well and formulate some kind of plan off that.
Yeah, it's not as if you just pick against your hand, right? You know, and just be like, oh, well, I guess 2 damage a turn's good. This should win me the game.
And let's be fair, when Sir Finley comes down, there are only really 3 that you're looking for. There are Hunter and Warlock, which are just almost universally fantastic, and then if you're playing an aggro board-focused mirror match, then Mage is fantastic to control the board as well. So it's pretty rare that you'll have to choose between two of those fantastic options. Normally there's just one standout anyway.
Now we see a second game in which Muzzy has awkward turns in the fact that he had to upgrade instead of N'Zoth's First Mate or have Fiery War Axe. He has to use the upgrade as a weapon. Now he's played the Cultist without getting the weapon buff value. And the problem is, although having the Cultist down as a 3/4 is great, especially on an empty board, the second HotMEOWTH gets value from, say, his Cultist, he's just naturally going to be ahead.
Yeah, Muzzy looking less than pleased with this situation here. He said, don't get discouraged, don't get frustrated, but his facial expressions are maybe starting to give it away here.
He is human, to be fair.
Last time I checked, yeah.
You checked whether Muzzy was human?
I did,
That's a weird thing to just check.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
My research knows no bounds, Raven.
Oh, I'm okay. Call me impressed.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be the captain just on the board for HotMEOWTH, and this is going to probably be the gist of this matchup. We've seen this matchup multiple times today, of course, but a lot of it is just fighting for that board. But Muzzy is in such a weak position. He can, if he wants to kill this captain, which it looks like he does, has to go for deckhand and the weapon trade here.
Yeah, I wonder whether he was just pausing there to look at the merits of just Frothing Berserker coming down and then trying to deal this potential extra point of damage that he needs for next turn. But his next turn is almost always looking to be Kor'kron Elite in this spot if he can get away with it, which means that he needs to deal with the South Sea Captain right away. And crucially now, HotMEOWTH is able to immediately buff his Frothing Berserker because you never want to drop a Frothing Berserker in the early to mid game in this mirror match as a 2/4 because this exact punish will just make your life miserable.
Yeah, it feels weird where you almost feel like the Raider play, he could have just not played it and it would have turned out better for him overall because it wouldn't have opened up the trade for the Frothing, to actually buff it up, as you said. So it's kind of the intricacies of this matchup, and now HotMEOWTH's just got a good old Arcanite Reaper on 5 if he really wants, and look at his run as well. HotMEOWTH's actually on 2 losses. I'm going to buy in the first round as Seed 1.
Yep. Both of these players really just on the brink of elimination at this point. TJ was gloating that both of his picks were still alive and in the tournament, but Muzzy really is hanging on by a thread at this point. Hugely important game for both of these players.
Yeah, and HotMEOWTH actually choosing to skip the Arcanite Reaper there because it doesn't develop a minion. And we've talked very, very much about how important the board is in this matchup. So although it looks kind of strange to just say, oh, I have 5 mana and Arcanite Reaper, 4 mana creature, you drop that on the board. Instead, it does mean he can just get more value of it going forward because now he can use the weapon to trade.
Yeah, it was a really, really close decision, honestly, because I was counting the damage as we came into that hand. So he was looking at Arcanite Reaper for 10, and then Kor'kron plus Hero Power, and then Kor'kron plus Hero Power, which is already 22 damage in total. Muzzy was sat at 22 exactly at that point, but of course still has the Warrior Armor Hero Power, so can begin to drag himself out of range. And you can see Muzzy here with the 4-1 record does need to just pick up a couple more crucial wins, does not want to be falling into that tiebreak bracket in the 2-loss area.
Yeah, that's definitely worst case scenario for a potential qualifier at this point in the Swiss. And Muzzy is in a rough position here. As you mentioned, with the sheer amount of damage we can see is available to HotMEOWTH, he can increase his weapon, his Arcanite Reaper now because the deckhand.
Yep.
You can just play that next turn, get effectively 12 additional damage. Well, not additional total, you get 5 from the Reaper anyway, but you know what I mean. 12 damage from swings, and then yeah, I mean, look at Muzzy. He's actually just armored up and played a buck, not even dropped a 3-drop hit.
Yeah, I mean, Muzzy has to find some kind of counter-lethal plan here because there's no way he can outlast all this damage long-term. It's just not happening. That's another 12 now coming in from the Reaper. There is another 4 in hand from the Kor'kron, and every turn that ticks past, the hero powers are just cancelling each other out, so Muzzy cannot even armor his way out of this.
Yeah, this is insane, and now just the lack of any real way to deal with this 8-3 onto the board. The fact that Muzzy's just face tanking it when there's a Hunter hero power to negate the armor, as you mentioned. There's still a minion on the board and a pretty strong weapon too. Means that Muzzy is going to lose game 2 as well, and HotMEOWTH goes 2-0 up so far. Very impressive for him so far.
Yeah, and despite Muzzy being 4-1 here, a second loss would be tough for him because you saw when the graphic came on screen, his one loss was in the opening round. And it doesn't always work out this way, but classically, as a general rule, the earlier your losses are, the worse that is for your Swiss tiebreakers. So he definitely will not want to fall into that bracket of 2 losses, and he's right on the hill of doing that right now. Again, he needs to look at his own advice. We know how good a player he is. The only thing holding Muzzy back historically has been Muzzy, so hopefully that isn't the case in this next game.
Yeah, now it's HotMEOWTH holding him back as well. A 2-0 lead is absolutely huge when HotMEOWTH's only got his rogue left, as we can see. Both Shaman's banned out. Not too much of a surprise with this style lineup as well, and this is just a true test for Muzzy here. He's either gonna make it or he's not, and this is going to be very rough.
And I think, I don't want to be unfair on him. He has not played badly this series.
Oh,
We're not saying
not.
This is Muzzy choking again. That's absolutely not happening. His games have been really a formality, in essence, for HotMEOWTH. He got the Reno when he needed it in the Reno Mage game after all the early removal. The Pirate Warrior draws just came out very, very one-sided. But what I definitely don't want to see is Muzzy have a chance to get back into this series now and throw it away through to frustration or nerves. And I'm sure Muzzy has been working on his calmness under pressure situation. If he has any chance to get a grip here, and he certainly does, because this is a fantastic matchup for him leading out. If he has any chance, then he's going to be putting it together nicely. And the remaining deck for HotMEOWTH is Miracle Rogue, which is the point where this aggro lineup, the full 4-deck aggro lineup, is focused on beating. They all beat up on Miracle Rogue.
Yep, so it's pretty much going to see now if HotMEOWTH can get the win with the Rogue. And although the aggro lineup performs extremely well versus the Rogue, it is still Rogue, and it can do silly things sometimes. So it's not as if this is a done deal yet. Muzzy is definitely in a more advantaged position overall. This is Hearthstone.
Yes, indeed. And HotMEOWTH has put together a pretty good opening draw here for the Miracle Rogue. Early Pirate, able to relieve some of the pressure from the opposing patches. Questing Adventurer, one of the key minions that he can use to make a counter push, now picks up the Preparation as well, so he can potentially have a huge turn if he's able to drop the questing and prep out a spell to clear some of the board.
Yeah, and I can only imagine how much Muzzy wished this was his opening hand in the previous games.
Yes.
Or in game 1.
In every game of Pirate Warrior he
ever
plays.
Yeah. This is exactly the style of opening hand he's looking for in almost pretty much any matchup overall. But here comes Mr. Questing Adventurer, and as I likened it to a weed earlier on, we are going to see this bad boy grow with a prep into Abyss to kill off the cultist, the coin into the conceal. Next turn, HotMEOWTH is just going to, has pretty much already gone all in and just said this Questing Adventurer will never die and continue to either trade or push damage.
Yeah, make no bones about it. This is just a race. HotMEOWTH has got his huge threat down. Muzzy has the perfect hand to respond to it, though, and it should be quite clear this is not a race HotMEOWTH is going to win. He has to now start using this Questing Adventurer as a trading tool, and he's going to bypass the Tomb Pillager here, go for a potential high roll from the Swashbuckler, recognizing the dire situation that he's in. Whirlwind comes down, allowing him to clear the board, but he does need to take damage in the process.
Yeah, and it looks like this is just almost going to... Oh, no, it's going to be game, right?
That is game.
Yep, that is going to be game with the Leroy. How often have we seen Leroy just sat in hands for, in Pirate Warriors for long periods? It's actually weird. All day we've seen Leroy just being there. So Muzzy is going to get the win versus HotMEOWTH. It is not going to be a 3-0 sweep, and that must be doing wonders for his confidence, because the second you get the win out the way, you're like, right, that was a pretty reasonable draw for Muzzy. I've shaken it off. Let's do this and get serious now.
Yeah, and if Muzzy's thinking rationally, which I'm sure he is, he knows he's still fine in this series. The scoreboard says that he's not fine, but his lineup is targeted primarily at Rogue. By bringing aggro decks are the #1 thing that Miracle Rogue struggles with. And so by targeting his lineup towards that, he wants to see those Miracle Rogues in other people's lineups. So the rest of the game almost becomes a formality. If this Rogue cannot get a win because of the quirks of how Conquest works, everything else just falls by the wayside.
Yeah, and we saw HotMEOWTH in that game actually just go for the questing because he just felt he had to risk it, really. And we've actually heard from HotMEOWTH and see what he thinks about taking risks in Hearthstone.
I think I generally is the person that likes to take more risks in Hearthstone. So when I see like a play that can guarantee to win me the game, but it's only like 45 to 55%, I'll probably just go for it and just like let's go and try to win. And if it doesn't work out, then whatever. I'll probably just go for it again.
I think he's definitely going to have to take risks, as you said. The rogue deck, capable of them, but he needs them. He has to win with this rogue deck against a lineup that's built to beat it.
Yeah, and HotMEOWTH's love of risk-taking, it permeates not just through his plays, but through his deck-building decisions as well, his lineup construction, famously bringing that insane Blood Warriors deck to the biggest show of them all, the BlizzCon, the World Championship at BlizzCon last year. So, yeah, totally agree with him. He does seem like a risk-taker, and sometimes it pays off for him.
Yeah, and here we see what appears to be a mirror match in terms of class, but definitely not in deck. And what's really great here is HotMEOWTH is playing the Miracle Rogue, as we've seen and as we've discussed. Muzzy is playing Aggro Rogue that a lot of players have been playing recently and is shouting out how good it is. Green Sheet last weekend qualified with a list similar to this. And guess who made this list? Have a guess.
Is it Muzzy?
It is!
What?
1 point for you, Subtle. The guy who built this deck is the guy on screen playing it right now. No one will know this deck better than him.
While you were giving that wonderful speech, I enjoyed it massively, the game ended.
Oh.
Coin prep fan Edwin Van Cleef.
When you said the game ended, I just naturally looked to Muzzy's hand and saying like, oh, that's a pretty aggressive start, seems good. Then glanced up and was like, oh, okay.
Oh, the humanity.
Well,
so
the opposite of taking a risk, I feel.
Yeah, you mentioned the differences in the deck. One of the key differences, apart from all the extra aggression and damage that Muzzy plays, you can.
Is it sap?
It is sap. There is no sap in Aggro Rogue, so the answers to an 8/8 are few and far between. He can start picking away at it with some minion presence, try and set up Eviscerate, try and set up SI7 Agent to get rid of it eventually. But we said the last game was going to devolve into a race. If Muzzy tries to race in this situation, the tables are going to be flipped because look at HotMEOWTH's hand. Cold Blood and Eviscerate cocked and ready to go.
He might even struggle to just race the Van Cleef. Never mind all that in hand, you know, as you said. So I think now Muzzy needs to just like, you know, just chill for a second and say, how do I kill this over how many turns? Because it's the only way, right? He just has to say, I kill this, I do this turn, as we saw the Averse, I try and build into the kill next turn. It's very difficult, but this is the only chance he would have at this game at this point.
I love this play, and the reason why I think this play is correct is you're just staring at Tomb Pillager. Your opponent, Muzzy, has to spend their entire turn now getting rid of this 12-4. If they don't, great, you have a 12-4. If they do, Tomb Pillager and keep going.
And he just saps it. The card, one of the key cards difference.
Whoa. Oh yeah, he needed to combo the Cold Blood. Okay, he's 1 mana short of being able to push the 7 the lethal, yeah.
I was like, no, I think this play's actually pretty okay. So, this is just an absolute destruction for Muzzy here. HotMEOWTH, straight off the back of that Van Cleef. We did say Miracle Rogue can do it sometimes, and that is one of the games where it did. Very fortunate opening there for HotMEOWTH. He cashed in on it. And the key card, you know, being the sap versus no sap, really came into play there.
Yeah, and just the destructive power of Edwin Van Cleef, that really is Miracle Rogue's huge answer to aggro matchups, because they just can't go long term. The inevitability for aggro is always there. Rogue has no taunts, Rogue has no heal that they play in popular builds. So Rogue has to find, or Miracle Rogue has to find some way of making a big counter push, and Edwin by far the best card in the deck to do it.
Yep, if you're going to ask for an opening against Aggro Rogue, it would exactly be that one. As well with just the combination of the Cold Bloods to increase the speed in which the game was going, and then the sap. So the Tomb Pillager didn't have a Cat in Hell's chance anyway, as it just got sapped away. So really huge there. It was a little bit unfortunate because I kind of wanted to see Muzzy play his deck more, but hey-ho, and HotMEOWTH does take it. So pretty impressive from HotMEOWTH so far.
It was, yeah. I mean, that game looked like a formality, but he set it up nicely. He actually played the patches and traded into the Small-Time Buccaneer on the opponent's side, so the fan would be a nice clean sweep. Muzzy was probably expecting the fan to come and just hoping there wasn't that big prep play that went with it, but especially being on the coin as well just made the Edwin an 8/8 even more destructive, and yeah, it's just so hard to beat that as the aggro deck. I've seen Pirate Warrior do it sometimes just purely because of their racing ability and the amount of damage they can output, but the Rogue deck just didn't seem to have the tools.
Yeah, so with that match over, we're going to check in with our lovely friends Cora and Lothar. How are you guys doing, and did you enjoy that very, very lengthy last game?
Man, poor Muzzy. We're always like, this is the time for Muzzy. This is Muzzy's day. And
It's a completely different type of loss this time, right? Like it wasn't Muzzy just beating himself up and making a mistake. Like those games were just a formality.
I mean,
like they just ended.
They were just unwinnable games. So
The deck has no answers to that situation. Like, what do you do?